Alright, time for another giraffephysics.com, debatephysics.com also, video presentation. So my interaction with Paul Nord has come to an end, aka Chester the Molester. Um, just, they always resort, they can't deal with the actual questions, they can't deal with the fact that they can't provide links to any evidence. And all they have is their defensive response, just like a religious kook. It's all just faith for them. That's all that matters. They have a crutch to, get through their life on, made out of these silly nonsense equations. And, it's just Holy Ghost nonsense. Anyway, so after 2 weeks of talking about Steve Mould's video, it's still absolutely clear that Paul Nord never even watched the whole video. So he made a response video to a video he didn't even watch. Because here again, he says it. So I've already played the clip twice, and just for the one point of just saying to this moron that he's not even understanding Steve's argument. And still, even this late into this project, here he says, Steve makes the mistake at the 5-minute mark. Yeah, you've already told me that 3 times, and I've already pointed out that that's bullshit. I not only pointed it out in email, I pointed it out in videos. But anyway, that you won't watch. He says that, well, of course you won't watch. You didn't watch the video you responded to, so of course you don't watch anything else. What are you watching? Cartoons? Anyway, he says that the rocket will have the same experience and therefore the same acceleration. Actually, it would be deceleration, but whatever. In response to each situation. That's not true. So again, they're saying the law of the lever isn't true. And nobody's bothered by that. These physicists defending conventional physics are disputing something that's never before been disputed, except when you put them in the corner and they have nowhere to go. Because they have to kill something to get out of where they are. Something precious has to die. So again, it's just like when they claim that you can conserve both the kinetic energy and the momentum when you're exchanging energy between unlike masses, and you can't. It's just a practical fact. All right, anyway. So again, it's obviously he didn't watch the video, right? Steve Mould was basically just saying my intuition says it should be, and then he spends the rest of the video explaining why his intuition was wrong. And this idiot didn't watch the video. All right, these words like work, energy, impulse, momentum, velocity, acceleration, time, and mass. So we know that all there really is mass and velocity. That's at the core, and the rest of it's your figments. Half, 1/2 and a squared notation. The rest of it is your garbage notation. So the concept of energy as being mass moving isn't in any way, you really can't debunk that as being a starting point for any description of anything called energy in the universe. A mass moving is overtly energetic. It fits the definition really well. All right. And mass all have specific meanings in physics. So just baby talk, just nonsense, just gibberish. That doesn't mean anything. Specific meanings like what? That they don't mean anything. Like the distinction between speed and velocity. Somehow something can have a speed, but it's not going in any direction. Yeah, it's going 60 miles an hour in no direction. All right. Your impression of whether a 1-pound rock lifted 1 foot in the air has more or less something than... So again, we're not talking about lifting, we're talking about dropping. In gravity, it's a scientific test. It's like Galileo dropping things off the crooked tower. It's a test. So again, he says he has such he is so hostile towards experiment. This is his rhetoric, and then he doesn't even get it right. Then a 1/2 point rock, whatever that is, lifted 2 feet in the air. So again, that's not the argument. Nowhere did I say lifted 2 feet. It's 4 pounds 1 foot, and then it's 1 pound 4 feet. So you want to play this some other game? That's your business. But anyway, that's the lifting argument. The lever argument was, using a half mass at twice the distance. So again, there's nothing confusing about this. The lever's simple rhetoric. Okay, the law of the lever basically says distance. Distance equals exactly the velocity. So obviously you could just replace the d with v and you're done. mv. mv equals mv. You can't get any simpler. All right, in the air is fine at the level of intuition. So again, we have this bullshit word, and it doesn't mean anything. That's not the argument. The argument is what actually happens in the universe, and do you have any evidence at all defending your wacky theory? And the simple truth is, Leibniz didn't have any evidence 350 years ago, and you still have no evidence. All right. If you want to make specific and testable predictions, well, that's exactly the point. You won't test them. Your physics has 350 years to drop 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet, and it hasn't done it. It hasn't done the simple lever experiment. It hasn't done the tug of war experiment. And the only experiment you have done, you certainly have done the ballistic pendulum, and it screams all over the place, kinetic energy is nonsense. Kinetic energy can't move the ballistic pendulum. It can't do work on it. It can't do work on a spaceship. It can't do work when it needs to be able to do work to show that it is real. So if you go to test it and find out if it's real, you can't find it. It doesn't crush cars. It doesn't spin motors. It doesn't do any work at all when fairly tested. And those are that's the absolute fact, and you haven't provided a link to one piece of credible evidence countering that argument, you despicable turd. All right, anyway. Predictions about motion and falling rocks. So there's no reason to turn this into falling rocks. Falling is a really important function in physics. The fact that you don't understand what gravity is, that you have some silly notion that it's a pull of some kind. It's elementally pulling, whatever the fuck that is. Space is pulling. Yeah, sure it is. Okay, you will need to work through the math. So it's just more distraction. The math is mv equals mv. That's the law of the lever. And you people can't stay on that subject and you won't provide evidence. All right. If you really want to learn physics, so that's when I've had my fill. This asshole he can't even watch a whole 20-minute video on physics. He responds to a video he didn't even watch. He claims some knowledge of vis visa and yet doesn't even know one of the standards of it, which is this idea of 4 pounds dropped 1 foot and 1 pound dropped 4 feet, which do not have the same momentum, yet somehow those two objects with completely different momentums are somehow supposed to do the same work. And he can't even figure out how that doesn't make much sense. You should take a course. Yeah, you should take a course in integrity. You little weasel. Okay, I normally get paid to provide individual instruction like this. Well, I'm going to make you pay for those words, frankly. All right, future, piss on this turd's grave. All right, he's the one sitting there. He's the guy against science. I'm asking you to do the damn fucking experiments. I'm asking you to prove your theory. I'm asking you to do something better than some sort of Muslim fanatic telling me I have to believe in snake gods. Fuck you, fatty. Do your job as a scientist. Actually prove what you're going to goddamn assert as a fact. And you're going to insult people's intelligence if they don't believe your Holy Ghost. Fuck you, fuck your Holy Ghost, fuck MV squared, fuck Leibniz, fuck you for ruining science, you stupid, ignorant old fart. Alright. So I did respond to him less aggressively, but so he says, I quote him, "Steve makes the mistake at the 5-minute mark." I said, "You didn't watch the whole video, did you?" A bit after the 10-minute mark, he states exactly the opposite of what he said at the 5-minute mark. The first half of the video, he was explaining his intuition. Later, he states what he thinks the actual science is. Of course, there is no citation to any actual experiment. You claim to know something about the history of mv squared, and you don't know that Leibniz's only claimed evidence was the statement that 4 pounds dropped 1 foot is the same energy as 1 pound dropped 4 feet? Question mark. Okay. I offered more than a dozen of your colleagues $4,000 to deal with this subject, and none of them showed any courage. Your evasions and petty insults are now a matter of record, and you will be eventually proven to be the science denier. Okay. What a fucking piece of turd. Ugh, it's disgusting that they let these kind of assholes graduate college, as they certainly have no respect for what intelligence is made out of, which is facts demonstrated by evidence and then logical reasoning, and they just can't do any of that. They think you can conserve both mv and mv squared. Two completely different numbers are going to equal each other somehow. Too ridiculous. Alright, so maybe we'll play some of his turdy video. Then I'll reference a couple of Dispar videos just because they happen to fall in front of my path. And comments. Something like that. And we probably should do a little bit more just lever analysis just for a context. Because, they're just evading the subject, and they just keep evading the subject, evading the points made, never dealing with any of them, because they are just liars. Okay, and it's what it comes down to. These aren't, like I said, to pretend he doesn't understand what the paradoxes are and what the problems are in this nonsense duality physics of theirs. It's just bullshit. Alright. So, I guess we'll do his video. Yeah, there he is. A little chubby. Alright, so let's go to the beginning and we'll just play clips through it. So he titled this Electric Car Tug of War, and it's really not a tug of war in the sense that these are motorized vehicles fighting with each other, and so they're completely not going to be, momentum's not going to have anything to do with it. All it's going to have to do with is traction. And so it's going to be the subject is just about friction. It's not about anything else. So that kind of spoils the fun.
That. And if we run this red one, it goes really.
So again, he does these videos for kids. So this is all trying to deceive children, which makes it all that much more molesty. So anyway, so he has two stupid cars, right? Two toy cars. Yeah, we're going to do science with our toys. And he puts, the one of them runs on 3 volts. He can't just say the truth, right? 2 batteries. All right, and the other one, he's going to fool it and only run it on 1.5 volts, by faking one of the batteries. So not that complicated. Just half-powered, essentially, car versus a full-powered car. So this is him messing the batteries.
In place of the second battery.
All right, so one of them's running on 1.5 volts.
Fast forward again and put that back together.
Yeah, very exciting. So then he tapes them poorly. So the video really is a piece of crap. So he tapes them on top, and that makes the cars flip up, so that didn't work. So then he tapes them from the bottom, so he has that. Oh, and then he does a commercial. So let's play the commercial.
Doesn't flip it over. All right, you want to see my YouTube channel now has T-shirts available. This is physics major. Don't try it at home.
Isn't that just so creative?
Hello, Mark Barden here.
Oh, a
from Saving
commercial
the Promise.
too.
On December
Pathetic.
14th, 2012,
That's pretty sad. Yes, it is
Hello,
disgusting.
everybody. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining
what
us
the
for.
fuck happened there? Okay, well, that's one of those YouTube things. Yeah, they just gotta keep putting that forward button right next to the play button. Should be back. It's got this dopey music at the beginning too.
Welcome to the physics lab.
Oh, sorry, we missed it. So thought you might have heard it there. All right, taped wrong, taped right, and then commercial for his T-shirts.
All right, you want to see my YouTube channel now has T-shirts available.
I mean, it's so creative, right? And they fit so well. With physics major, don't try this at home. That's the best he could come up with. Oh, God.
This is physics major. Don't try it at home. You can order this down below the video. Support the channel.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think of it. There's also a college. Don't try this at home.
So hilarious, whatever that means. So it just says college, don't try this at home or something. I mean, and why would somebody tell people, look, if you want to support the channel, why do it that way, where more than half the money goes to the stupid T-shirt company? Just, pay the guy. I mean, it's just so pathetic. Go ahead, waste some money on a shitty shirt, okay? That's not going to be worth anything near the 25 or 30 bucks you're going to pay for it. I mean, just amazing. Amazing. I mean, I paid $3 for this shirt. It's fantastic. $3.
And blue one on, red one on.
All right, so what he doesn't tell us is that you can sort of see it if you really do look, that he smeared glycerin. Glycerin. That's a good word, isn't it? Glycerin. I like that. Glycerin on the table, so, it's all oily. And so obviously the faster car isn't pulling the slower car. So this is like when you're stuck in the mud and they advise you to put the car in a low gear to keep the wheels from actually spinning too fast. So you want to try to get a grip on the ground. You want to try to get some traction. And if you spin the wheels quickly, you won't get any of that. So this is just a friction argument. It doesn't have anything to do with power or energy or torque or anything. It's just about adhesion.
And it consistently takes off. Now this blue one was very slowly winning. If I give it more weight,
Yeah, it obviously wins more. Doesn't win any faster. What the hell is this stupid fucking goddamn? I'm hitting the play button. Alright, so he's just putting weights in the car, making it heavier, gets better traction because gravity is creating the
50
friction. So it's really just playing a game with friction. You're just saying, okay, I'm going to increase the collection of force by putting a bigger sail, a gravity sail, pushing it into the surface. And so this is just like putting sand in the back of your car, in the trunk, in the old days when everything was rear-wheel drive anyway. Obviously you wouldn't do that nowadays. To get better traction. Okay, and that's all it is. So it's a big waste of time video and totally, in a way, totally mislabeled, because this really isn't any kind of tug of war. It's just a comparison between tractions. So he just keeps doing the same thing, putting a weight in, taking the weight out, putting the weight in, taking the weight out. He just really doesn't do anything at all that could be considered interesting.
all right. And if you don't want to try this at home, come over to my house.
Whatever
Thanks.
that means. Creepy. Then he redoes the video.
What I realized is going on when this is spinning, when the tires are slipping, the coefficient of friction goes way down.
So obviously it's the other way around. The coefficient of friction went way down, and that's why they're spinning. Hilarious, really. Okay, so obviously the faster a surface moves across another surface, there's going to be less capacity to make contact, and the slower it goes, the more capacity there is to make contact in all respects. That is, electrostatic contact, pushing into the surface to hit rough spots contact. Any form of contact is going to be improved, okay, by first having more downward pressure, something pushing you into the surface, and the nature of the materials that you're putting against each other. So, ice against ice, not much hope for much friction.
And you'll notice this if you're accelerating your car on a slippery road. If you really punch the accelerator, it's easier for that tire to break free.
Right, and it's stuck in the mud, blah, 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 stuck in the snow, blah, blah, blah. So, again, it's just... So then he does this ramp thing, which, again, is just another... It's all dependent on materials. There's no, hard science here that means much in terms of how you can break adhesion and what causes there to be static friction. So it's just really, the subject is static versus kinetic friction, and kinetic friction constantly changes depending on what your velocity is. So the faster you go, the less friction you have with a surface. The slower you go, the more friction. Duh.
That's what's going on with the cars. This one goes faster. It spins its tires, and once it breaks free, it just keeps moving.
So again, this is nothing like the tug of war I was describing in my video, which was just a momentum one. You just give two cars velocity with a spring, who cares what. One car is going twice as fast as the other, or you just use different masses. You're just trying to say, here's two momentums and two definitions of kinetic energy, and you're just going to test to see if the kinetic energy ever wins the tug of war. And the fact is that it doesn't. And then he even admitted that, because when I posed the direct question to him, a 5-mass car going 1 velocity and a 1-mass car going 5 velocity, his response was basically the heaviest car always wins. And if the heaviest car wins, that means the car with 25 times more kinetic energy, 25 times more capacity to do work by their definition, loses the tug of war. Now, I would argue it would have been a tie, but I would argue that, with objects that didn't have wheels, because if you take into account the wheels, then the higher velocity cart does have a slight advantage because it has a little bit of momentum, a little bit of extra energy caught up in its angular momentum of its wheels. But that's the real physics. The real physics is wheels matter. The real physics is momentum and kinetic energy can be tested, and they choose not to test it. Instead, they do this silly nonsense. So he could have done the simple experiment, just take the twice mass, give it a 1 velocity, take the half mass, give it 1 velocity, and that's easy to, 2 velocity, that one's easy to do. Any spring will produce that outcome, and you have two things moving away from each other, tie a string between them, and you'll see that, it'll never conserve the kinetic energy. There'll be no evidence of the kinetic energy existing at all. The 5 mass going 10 and the 10 mass going 5 will not demonstrate that the 5 mass has twice the energy if a tug of war actually takes place. It's just a fact. They won't concede the fact, and they won't do the experiment. Those are the facts.
Will be a lot more weight.
So he just keeps doing the same thing over and over and over and over. So he makes a 1-minute video in response to Steve Mould's lever video, which he didn't watch. And then he makes this, whatever it is, 7-minute video, 8 minutes and 51 seconds, where he says absolutely nothing and just basically illustrates the same thing over and over and over and over. So, not very fascinating. All right, so take a pause, and then we'll move on. Might as well draw some stuff. So again, the balance is pretty decisive in this whole argument. So if you do make yourself a balance, suspended from the top, you can put the half mass 2 distances, and then put the full mass 1 distance. So you can just have that one on first, and then you place this one on here. You don't drop it, you just place it, and it'll automatically start to oscillate. Okay, so you will be giving this 2x the velocity of this falling object. It's going to happen. No doubt about it. And the same thing's going to happen if you start with the 2 mass on here and then put the 2 mass on. It's going to oscillate the same way, because it's the same energy doing the same amount of work. That is, creating the same momentum in objects. And creating momentum is what work is. Work is causing something to have momentum, not causing something to have kinetic energy. I mean, it's so obvious, that if you have this mechanism and it oscillates 100 times at exactly the same speed going both directions, so 1 mass going 1v is going to equal a half mass going 2v, completely conservationally. I mean, you're losing so little energy, and just demonstrates that it's the same amount of work to move the half mass twice the velocity it is to move the full mass 1 velocity. And again, Minute Physics did the little clip inside of Steve Mould's video and basically pointed out that levers conserve the momentum. You can make a full mass move 1 unit of distance, and you can make a half mass move 2 units of distance in exactly the same time using exactly the same force. So, proving, okay, that momentum is conserved, not kinetic energy. And their argument basically is they're saying that you can destroy the momentum. So let's just understand their argument. So they're saying if I did this experiment and I put a 1 mass, a half mass out here, and I were to drop the full mass there, that this could only move with 1.4 the velocity, not 2. And if that happens, it means you've lost 30% of this thing's momentum. So 30% of the momentum has been lost. And they don't explain how it was lost. Where is it? So Richard Feynman would sort of argue that these, energy stuff is in units. And if you have 100 units going in, you have to have 100 units. You have to account for them all. You have to find them. If you only have 80 coming out and you started with 100, you got to find the other 20 somewhere. You got to explain where the other 20 went. And they don't provide any of that. So no explanation for where a third of the momentum went. And then I could do the rocket thing again. I could do all these things over and over. But what we'll do is the rolling thing, just because that's what his video was about, friction. So, I don't want that. Okay. So, you could take 2 identical objects and give them velocities. And what you'll find is the one that has twice the velocity, okay, will actually roll 4 times the distance. Now that looks like something, right? You can say, boy, 4 times the distance, 4 times the work. Yep, kinetic energy is real. I don't know why this doesn't show up. But anyway, 2x the velocity. But what you could also notice is that this, experiment here, this is 1 velocity, will be happening right here. So instead of halfway, it's going to be going 1/2 the velocity, here. Okay, and this experiment, this part of the experiment will be identical to this one. Same time, it'll take the same time to go from here to here as it took to go from here to here. And the other fact is this will be the same 1 unit of time. So you have 1 unit of time here, and this whole distance, this 3 units of distance, will happen in 1 unit of time. So it's only 1 unit of friction that spreads over this entire surface. So it's like saying 1 second of rain, and then you have a 1 second of rain here. So you can understand that here will be just as wet as it will be here, because that's about how much time it was in the rain. And so you're spreading the same wetness across this big surface as you are this small surface. So obviously the friction here is very high, and the friction here is very low. And so if you were to chart the friction, it would look something like, little friction, a little more, 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 a little more. Okay, it just gets more and more friction as it slows down. So all of the energy, the momentum of the two objects, is being consumed by the friction. So if I was dropping something in gravity and I had a surface, the idea was I could use wind to push the object into the surface. And obviously, the slower it's going, the more wind is going to hit it, and the harder it's going to be pushed into the surface, so the even slower it's going to go, because it's going to be making more contact. And the faster it's going through the wind, the less pressure per inch, and the less energy going to be lost to the surface. So obviously that's why something with twice the velocity travels 4 times as far, is because it's got a huge advantage by going faster. It's losing less energy per inch to the surface. Really easy physics. And they're denying that. They're saying that's not true. They're basically arguing that you can't slide across thin ice and reduce your weight, okay, and cause the ice not to break. So they're basically saying if you go quickly across thin ice, you won't be able to increase your chances of not breaking the ice. That you have to break the ice, you have to fall in, because there's no way to change how much you weigh on the ice by moving quickly, when of course you can. The ice could almost not feel you. If you go fast enough, the ice won't even know you were there. Fact. I can put a hole in the ground and have a car going very fast, and it's going fast enough where it'll barely detect the hole, barely hit the other edge, barely any impact at all, because it doesn't have enough time to fall into the hole. Because gravity is a time-dependent force. That simple logic, that reasonable statement I just made, they say they have refuted it with some sort of evidence, and they have none. They have no argument, they have no reasoning, they have no logic, and they have no physical experiments. Which just makes them liars, not scientists. Okay, religious kooks, and nothing more. Alright, so the despicable Dispar had this video a while back. He did, what you could argue is a lever launcher. He's launching 2 objects with this stick here. Okay, so it's kind of a cruddy little stick, frankly. Lots of bending possible, a little dowel. And he's pushing these kind of much heavier masses. And the idea is that they're wheels, like a wheel, all right, that has a profile, okay, a thickness, all right, and so you can sort of understand it's a piece of stuff this way rolling this way. So it's not rolling, it's this pendulum hanging. And the problem is it was turning, so we made a little slot here to try to stop it from turning. Okay, and completely failed. So as you can see here in this, you can see that it's obviously turned to face you, because you can see this whole face of it. So before it got through the timing gate, it already turned sideways. And the problem was that he's really stupid and he doesn't understand any of the engineering concepts. So the idea is this is going to go through a timing gate and tell you what the velocity is. Now obviously if this turns, the profile gets very small. That means when it goes through the gate, it's much smaller than it was, so it looks like it's going much faster than it actually is. So obviously a huge flaw in the experiment. Now the simple solution would have been to use a round cylinder, okay, hang that down to go through the timing gate. So he basically has a, the round object is up here, and he needs something to go through the timing gate, something consistent. Well, this would be consistent because if this turns, it's got the same profile. So when it goes through the eye, it has the same profile no matter how it turns. But he's not clever enough to understand how to engineer the experiment to function properly. So he puts up these propaganda videos and says, look, I've proven something. And what he's proven is he's really dumb. And he's evil, okay? And he doesn't mind confusing subjects, okay? And obviously you're just, you're pretending, when it's turned that much, okay, that's just way off. You obviously know the experiment isn't good enough. You can't publish it as evidence when it's that flawed. So you have to fix it, find a solution, or do something else. But don't publish garbage as evidence. And this is garbage. All right. So now he published another video just 4 days ago. So we'll rag on that one. Some asshole linked to it. I mean, I don't go looking for his videos because every single time there's always something as obvious as that wrong with his videos. And nobody calls him out on it except me. None of the people watching the video can figure out that, oh, he measured wrong. Oh, he didn't, there's something wrong with the video. No, I have to show up and point out what's wrong. That's how little integrity they have. Alright, so I guess I'll draw this next experiment before so he's just going to try to prove that somehow when you are spinning, okay, masses, that somehow when you have the mass located here, okay, so you say you have full masses there or half masses out here, okay, and the idea is that has the same angular momentum. These two things, by the law of the lever, okay, by the law of conservation of momentum, these two things would require the same energy to spin and would produce the same energy once they are spinning. So if you just put them on a saw disc or something else, it would take the same energy to rotate them, and they would have the same impact energy if you had them hit something, because you have, one velocity here and two velocity here, okay, to account for the difference in the momentums, the proportional distance times the mass. That's the law of the lever. All right, so he's going to try to duplicate that experiment. So again, he does something just plain too stupid. All right, so he does figure out it has to be the same piece of lever. I don't know whether he has the distances right or not, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so he's using round washers, okay, and the problem, put on this dowel, and the problem is he has clips to hold them. So, and what he didn't figure out was if you're going to have 4 clips here, like you're going to have 2 washers here, 1, 2, 1, 2, you're going to have 1 washer out here, and 1 washer, and a clip, and a clip, and a clip, and a clip. The mistake is that there's 4 clips. That's what you've added to the stick, and you've only added 4 here. So you don't have twice the weight there. So he couldn't figure that out. That by this one has a huge advantage in the sense that this one's essentially carrying 2 extra clips of weight all the way on the outside. So what he had to do the experiment right is he had to have 8 clips here. And then the clips would equal twice the mass. And that would mean you have a 1 mass out here, 2 clips. And you have a 2 mass, 4 clips here. However you want to look at that. You'd have half the number of clips on the outside that you have on the inside. That's the ratio you would have to maintain. And so he couldn't figure that out. All right. So just another garbage experiment trying to, claim a proof. And it's not proof. It's just showing they can't do an honest experiment because they have no desire to be honest and to do science. They're just trying to prove me wrong, and that's their only ambition. They have a hate for me, and they'll do anything, pretty much, to cheat, to take a cheap shot. And that's all they live for, because they're really small people. So let's see if we have the video showing. Yes. So it's garbage video. It's another one of these crappily edited. So the point is he's using some kind of drill where he pulls the trigger once or something, and he's saying, oh, that's the same energy. So even that's kind of bullshit. All right. And his argument is that somehow when you compare, where's the comparison? That's not the comparison. The 2 mass to the 1 mass, that somehow, he's proven his argument. So here he has them superimposed on each other, so that they don't spin at the same speed. And obviously, well, you don't have them set up correctly to do that. You haven't obeyed the law of the lever, moron. So that's his big proof there. So it's a quarter difference in their spin, their total spin, and the obvious defect in the experiment is there's only 4 clips on the inside, and there's 4 clips on the outside. You can see that here in that. That's a good image there, right? You can see that? Yep. So 4 clips on the outside, 4 clips on the inside. There's supposed to be twice as much weight on the inside. So, again, he couldn't see the obvious. And none of his idiotic supporters will see the obvious. And again, it's just every single video is like this. That's why I don't do this anymore. Is because this is a waste of time, to waste my time with people who are insincere and really can't see the overtly obvious defects in the experiments they're producing. And they keep doing it. So this is, bad scientists doing bad physics. Boy who cried wolf. I mean, how many times can they do their lie science before you just say, oh, fuck this. Waste of time. All right, so we'll see if there's any comments. All right, comments. So this guy, blue dude or whatever, brought up spinning wheel and said seems to be the simplest experimental device. 1 pound 4 inches hub, blah blah, 4 pound weight 1 inch, mounted opposite weights. Obviously, yeah, you can balance wheels with very different weights and different positions, and all it's about is calculating the momentum, and that will decide what balances. Calculating the kinetic energy will not balance the wheel. So it is a pretty powerful argument. All right, so this guy posted the crappy video, unannotated in any way, to the garbage experiment. So we're going to just block him because obviously he has no sincerity. He didn't even really look at the experiment and say, is this a credible experiment? Is this the same energy going in each time? Is it really? Yeah. This should decide the fate of physics. This is going to decide the truth. Is this shitty, rickety crap experiment that, again, he can't figure out that he engineered it incorrectly. He didn't even obey the simple law of the lever rules. Fuck you. All right. So he says here, what do you think it demonstrates? That 2 mass 1v and 1v are equal? Question mark. Ha ha, no. Gary thinks momentum is energy. Yeah, that's right, I do. And you aren't going to show any credible evidence showing otherwise. So, fuck you. Yeah, ever. They're never going to show any of this. You think they're going to someday show it taking 25 times the fuel to move something 5 times as fast? Or something going 5 times as fast doing 25 times any kind of work of any kind? No, it's never going to happen. Because it's a garbage theory invented by a religious kook. The end. And momentum worked beautifully. It was one of the biggest insights of Galileo, Descartes, and Newton, was this vision of a mechanical universe that fed on this transferring of momentum. That's why conservation of momentum is a thing, is because the idea was that it just moves from object to object to object to object to object to object to object, that it has a trillion-year life, that it is forever. Motion is forever. There's no place motion goes to die. It's just, it's one of the, simple, perfect truths of science, and they've pissed all over it and ruined it. And that's disgusting. All right, some asshole accused me of saying something I didn't say, so I responded to that. That's a stupid request. Okay, so this is some asshole. Says, of course, the one mass has to transfer all of its momentum to the 3 mass before it bounces back in the opposite direction. So again, he's saying he has some absolute proof that reflections don't happen right on the surface of, say, hard steel. And I think the Steve Mould video with the ball bearing bouncing demonstrates exactly the opposite, that the thin material that he used as a hard surface, the reflection was happening right there. It wasn't going anywhere else. It wasn't going to the core of the earth, and then the core of the earth says, I can't accept the energy. No, it was bouncing right there on the surface. During the collision, it's already been proven that motion moves at the speed of sound in the material. So you could hit a giant, a 10-foot long or 20-foot long steel rod. You could hit one end, and at the speed of sound in steel, like it's 5 times or something, the speed of sound, it's like 5,000 meters per second. At that speed is the expansion of the steel. So, it's going really slow in some respects when motion actually happens. So it has to collect the whole motion. So obviously the reflection can't wait for it to go all the way to the other end of the steel and then bounce back. It's not gonna wait that long. So that's just silly. All right. During the collision, there's a point where the one mass comes to a full stop before it bounces back. And again, why does it bounce back? Is because the energy is being reflected. All right, it's not being accepted. All right, now it's moving back into the object. That takes time too. It takes time for, say, the tennis ball hits and flattens. It takes time for the tennis ball now to start expanding. All right, which means the momentum is 0 at that point. So momentum and mass 1, the first went from 10 to 0. So we know that it's not about the motion, it's about the force that caused the motion. And now the force is being recalculated, okay? It's being reformed, and then the 2 objects are going to move. So we know the fact that nothing's moving in 1 trillionth of a second doesn't mean that there's no motion in the system. It just means that it's in chaos, and now it's going to consolidate into motion. So is this worthy of all this argument? Your obligation is to demonstrate something about momentum versus kinetic energy, retard. You say it went from 10 to 2.5, which means it didn't even come to a full stop. So bullshit. It's obviously changing direction in one case, you moron. And the other case, it's accepted the 75 cents, so to speak, of the dollar. One object has 75 cents, the other object has 25 cents that it couldn't accept. So it rejected 25 cents of the energy. If its momentum did not reduce all the way down to 0, so again, this is just baby talk, this idea The elemental force is what moves things. It's an actual force that things possess. They collect it. You collect it in gravity. You get changed by it. It changes how your electrons and protons are moving. That's what's being moved. The real universe, as I've stated, is made out of electrons and protons. When something moves, they have to be moved first. All right? And it takes time for them all to collect motion. They all have to agree to move. One electron can't move. 10% of the electrons can't move. They all have to agree to move. Moron. All right. So I'm just going to remove it. I won't. But, you know, come on. Stay on the subject. You're creating free momentum. That's the problem with the experiment. Pretending that it has something to do with stopping and not stopping and the exchange of force is just a canard. You're just looking for a red herring. All right, let's see. No, I don't think the relationship between force and motion was the thing Newton found with pendulums. So, you know, you can think whatever you wish. I'm arguing that you have no evidence that Newton believed in mv squared because he wouldn't have written a third law if he did. Why would you write a third law about equal and opposite reactions if you believed bullets had 2,000 joules and gun recoils had 2? If you believe that, why would you write a third law? Okay. It was how motion is conserved in collisions no matter what the materials are. And so again, he's saying it's conserved because there's minus motion. So you can have anti-motion and unmotion. So if you send something going this way, it's unmotion. And so it undoes motion in this direction. So when the explosive happens in the gun, there's no energy, okay, because the same momentum goes that way, it goes that way, and they cancel somehow. There's no motion in the universe. Yeah, ridiculous nonsense. All right. So I think that's it for anything new. Let's see, I watched the debate. Yeah, we did that, I think. It's such an old news kind of subject. Yeah, this is all old crap. Alright. So I believe that's probably enough of a video, but I'll take a little pause. And see where we go from here. I mean, it's probably the 20th again. We'll send out emails again requesting somebody to pick up this subject and do a better job than Steve Mould did. Alright, so fact is Paul Nord or whatever is an asshole and a jerk, and he's not a very good scientist because he doesn't think experimental evidence is important, really important, before you start making proclamations that other people have to believe, or you're going to insult their intelligence. Well, fuck you. You're wrong. All right, and you're an arrogant jackass. So fuck you. Get what you deserve, shithead.